to welcome you all to this special evening brought to you by the Prabha Khaitan Foundation. Tonight we come together to celebrate the power of words, the art of storytelling, and the meaningful bond shared by authors and their readers. The Right Circle is a space where literature comes alive through intimate and enriching conversations. It invites us to explore the lives, journeys, and creative minds of some of the most remarkable authors of our time. It's a celebration of stories, ideas, and the journeys behind the words. This evening, we're honored to host a conversation that promises insight, inspiration, and reflection. We are truly privileged to be joined by an exceptional guest, Rajdeep Sardesai, a name that needs little introduction. Known for his journalistic integrity, incisive commentary, and a profound grasp of the world around us, his voice has shaped the way many of us understand current affairs and the deeper currents of our society. A very warm welcome to you, sir. In conversation with him, this evening is Ayieno Kechü, and together they promise an exchange that will captivate, challenge, and inspire. Today's event is in association with Niathu Zone by the Park and the support of Aahisa Women of Dimapur. Our eminent patron, Sri Cement Limited, supports our event as the CSR initiative. Before moving ahead, I would like to take some time to say a few words about the foundation. The Prabha Khaitan Foundation is a non-profitable trust committed to humanitarian and socio-cultural causes. Late Dr. Prabha Khaitan established it as a charitable trust in the early 1980s. Based in Calcutta, it is committed to supporting women's empowerment, gender equality, literature, culture, and performing arts. Late Dr. Prabha Khaitan was an eminent Indian literature philanthropist, social worker, entrepreneur, and feminist who established a foundation and believed in unity in diversity. The foundation's multifaceted initiatives include the Right Circle, Kalam, Akhar, Kitab, an author's afternoon, Love's Shabd, Ek Mulakat, Tet-Eti, the Universe Rights, Chopal, Rahat, Karuna, Muskan, and boutique festivals like Sheher, Nama, and Ramayana Kala Utsav. These fall under the diverse verticals of literature and language, culture and heritage, social welfare, and women empowerment. We're thrilled to announce that three-time Grammy Award winner, Vicky Cage, the creative force behind the Prabha Khaitan Foundation's anthem and color tune, has curated 12 vibrant musical pieces for our event invites, social media, and global outreach. Each month, we spotlight a pressing social issue through music. The music of the month for March is Echoes of Acceleration, a bold, energetic track inspired by South India's Tapambuchi style. Now allow me to introduce to you the author for the evening, although he sure needs no introduction. Rajdeep Sardesai is an award-winning senior journalist, author, and TV news presenter. Currently the consulting editor and lead news anchor of India Today Group, he has over 3 decades of journalistic experience in print and television. He was the founder editor of the IBN 18 network, and before that was the managing editor of NDTV 24/7 and NDTV India. He has won more than 50 awards for journalistic excellence. Rajdeep's previous books on the Indian elections 2019, How Modi Won India, and 2014, The Election That Changed India, have been national bestsellers. He is also the author of Democracy's 9, The Great Indian Cricket Story. His latest book, 2024, The Election That Surprised India, released recently. Today's conversationalist is a familiar and respected name, Ayieno Kechü, a seasoned media professional who has worked as a producer-director with CBN for acclaimed shows on Z Networks and Sony TV. She later served as policy specialist at YouTube and Google India, bringing her expertise to the forefront of digital media governance. Ayieno also led Aahisa initiatives at the Nagaland State AIDS Control Society, contributing to critical public health communication initiatives.
It's a great pleasure, so thank you to Aahisa Women and the Prabha Khaitan Foundation. It is fantastic to be in a part of the country that I think needs to connect far more, that we in Delhi need to connect far more with. And one of my aims while traveling across with the book has been that I should go to every Indian state if I can. So I've done about 15, 16, so that's not bad. The aim is to finish all 28 by the end of this year. But thank you very much for having me here in Nagaland. I won't mention whatever we discussed there.
Yeah,
no worry.
that's off the record.
That's all off the record.
That's off the record, yeah. It's such an honor and a privilege to be having this conversation with you today. For the Gen X and the millennials who had access to satellite television, we grew up watching you on TV. So I started following you on TV since your days with NDTV when you used to anchor the big fight. So yeah, that was a long time ago.
It was a long, when you said that just now,
Yeah.
I was reminded of this lady who was on the flight with me from Guwahati to Dimapur. And she was if I may be allowed to say, a relatively old lady. And she looks at me and says, I've been seeing you on TV since I was young. And the moment she said that, I said, my God, I have a program. I was trying to think, how old have I become? I mean, I'm going to be 60 in 2 months. And, that's a long time. I started off way back in 1998 in print. Television just happened along the way in 1994, so it's 31 years in TV as well. But yeah, when she looked at me, I said, my God, I need to find something else to do in life. I need a second innings, maybe in whatever else in life. But yeah, it was a very different age that you're talking about. We actually have in this country now more than 400 24/7 news channels, officially. Licensed 24/7 news channels are more than 400. This does not include cable channels. Some parts of the country like Goa, where I come from, we have only cable channels. So you can imagine the number of channels that are there. And there's a lot of noise. I think there was less noise in the past. I keep saying people should watch TV now only in two situations. If there is someone in your house who has low blood pressure and you need to increase the blood pressure, watch news TV. If there is someone in your house who is in coma and you need to get them to recover, watch news TV. But it has become a lot of noise. I just saw, I'm sorry to digress, but I just saw this case only yesterday night I don't know if you've heard of this girl called Riya Chakraborty. She was an actor who was even jailed for 4 weeks saying that she was carrying drugs. She was accused of murdering for a while this actor who had committed suicide, Sushant Singh. This was 2020, 5 years ago. And yesterday the CBI put a closure report saying they found no evidence of any involvement of her. And I remember interviewing her in 2020, and that interview was perhaps the first time that people got a chance to hear Riya's side. Until then, for 4 or 5 months, she was made out to be as if she had done black magic on this man, that she had given him drugs, that she had murdered him. And I was thinking to myself, will any of us now apologize? A young woman lost her career. Her brother was going to do an MBA in America. That MBA couldn't happen. Her father, who was an army doctor, was attacked and told that he also is a drug dealer. And, imagine, who's going to be held accountable? So when you mentioned the earlier days, at least because I think there were fewer channels, less of this media noise, maybe we were a little bit more careful. Now we are, all of us are in fast forward mode. We have no pause button in life. And I think that's why there's no accountability. So I feel sad in a way. I almost remember that period when you were young, with a sort of nostalgia.
Yeah, I used to religiously watch your show along with my late mother. So I have childhood memories of the big fight. It was a high decibel program. It used to be always very loud.
Yeah.
And even after the signature cue, fades off, we would often hear the anchor, trying to.
It was loud, but at least they didn't really. It was a debate. It wasn't just plain shouting. You had quality people coming in and debating. You mentioned, NDTV. I remember a colleague of mine. Some of you will know her, Banu Haralu, who was there when I thought I might catch her here, but she was there in those early days. And you know, Banu was a good old-fashioned, relatively soft-spoken reporter. Today there seems to be no time for anyone to speak softly. You know, you have to speak loudly, as you said, and therefore you lose some of the essence of the news.
So my first question to you is, with a career spanning over 30 years in print and TV journalism, how do you continue to stay passionate to a profession which is so challenging and to keep asking inconvenient questions?
You know, part of the reason is that in life, if you fail at everything else, there's always journalism. I grew up in Bombay or Mumbai, that is now known. My father was a cricketer for India, played 12 years from 1961 to 73. He's the only Goa-born cricketer to play for India. So I grew up wanting to be a cricketer. The problem is that cricket requires talent. You can't. My father would always tell me, once you go on the ground, you're going to have to score the runs. I cannot for you. You know, a politician's son or daughter can become a politician. No parents in politics, right? Politician's son and daughter can become politicians. Businessmen's children can become businessmen, but a cricketer's son cannot. So I failed at cricket. Then I said I'll become a lawyer. I found law being a lot of early years were a little tough. So I used to write at the time. So I drifted in a way into journalism. But I was genuinely, to be very honest with you, excited about news from the time I was a child. I still remember 1977, I was 12 years old, and Indira Gandhi was defeated in this famous election of 1977. And I saw the newspaper as I was going to school. I picked it up and I took the newspaper's front page headline to everybody in school. Indira Gandhi is defeated, Indira Gandhi is defeated. And if a 12-year-old is excited about Indira Gandhi being defeated in 1977, then I guess in 2024 I'm excited that Narendra Modi has become Prime Minister for a third time or didn't get the 400 seats that he wanted, whichever way you want to look at it. But the truth of the matter is, India is the only place you should do journalism in, because every day is a new day. And there's always something crazy and exciting happening in some part of the country. And today I was reminded of a little bit of the craziness of your state, where you don't have an opposition. I mean, you know, I fear, when I thought about it, first thing I thought, what Nagaland thinks today, I hope India doesn't think tomorrow. That one day India will also say there is no opposition. You know, everybody will join the ruling party. But in India, anything can happen. It is an absolutely crazy story. I mentioned one of these stories in my book. It was a Friday night, 2019. And I was doing breaking news in the night at 11 o'clock. Uddhav Thackeray to become Maharashtra Chief Minister. All the parties had come together and said he's going to be our Chief Minister. So I went home 11:30, Friday night, next day was Saturday. I said, nice holiday. So I poured myself a small drink. I said, drink Friday night, next morning I will go for a nice long walk. Got up at 7 in the morning to go for a walk. I see 6 missed calls from my office. So I rang up the office. I said, what has happened? Why the missed calls? He said, sir, where are you? We have been trying to please rush to the office. I said, rush to the office for what? Sir, Maharashtra Chief Minister is being sworn in. But I said, yesterday we have already announced Uddhav Thackeray will be sworn in 2 days later. No. Devendra Fadnavis is about to be sworn in at 7. I said, when did that happen? They said, no, President's rule has been revoked at 2 a.m. in the morning. Only in India will the President wake up at 2 a.m. in the morning. I mean, and so my walk went, I couldn't even have a drink. I mean, my drink from last night, I was still recovering from my hangover. And I went rushing to office and said, now which other country will this madness take place? I mean, you never know. In any part of the country, who knows, your Chief Minister tomorrow decides to abandon some of his allies, and that could also happen in Nagaland. Anything can happen. Defections take place, and the worst thing in India is most of these things usually happen on weekends. So I've learned over the years, always, never tell people, I'm going to enjoy the weekend, nothing's going to happen. Because that is a kiss of death, something's going to happen. So I think it's that passion, that, there is always somewhere, some part of the country where something exciting is happening and you want to know more about it. And that's kept me going. It's such and I mentioned this in the book, this is the most diverse country in the world. I mean, I'm with you here in a part of the country which is so distinct, let's say, to a Kerala, which is so distinct to a Uttar Pradesh. And even within Uttar Pradesh, Western UP seems to look at life very different to Eastern UP. I mean, which other country in the world is as diverse as India? And I think that is our strength. And in a way, this book is a tribute and a celebration of that diversity.
Your wife, Sagarika Ghosh, she is a politician now, but she is also a prominent journalist. So how do you navigate professional differences at home?
Oh God. Yeah, first of all, she's Bengali, so Bengali women have, you can see why my hair is blue. I've been married now for 31 years, and her hair is all black, and my hair has turned fully grey. I mean, that should tell you how I navigate those. Look, the truth of the matter is she sort of left journalism, full-time journalism about 4 or 5 years ago, 2020. And last year suddenly comes to me one day and says, Mamata Banerjee has asked me to be a Rajya Sabha MP from Bengal. So I said, okay, I hope you're telling her that you will not, that you're not interested. She said, no, she had asked me 3 years before also. I had said no. This time I'm going to say yes. I said, are you sure? She said, yeah, the kids are grown up. I feel very strongly that we need a strong opposition. I am from Bengal. I believe that Mamata represents Bengal's interests in Delhi. She wants me to. So I said, what do you do? As I said, when you are faced with a Bengali woman in that who's already decided, I mean, there's nothing. But it is, it makes it tougher for me in some ways. But I like to see myself as, she has every right to live the life she wants. If she believes that's the way she wants to live her life, good luck to her. I would never do it. I am very happy observing all the drama that takes place. I don't want to be, I'm happy to criticize Mamata Banerjee when she goes wrong, and I will criticize the government when they go wrong. I believe that's my duty, my dharma, and we're, so at home we try and discuss which is the best Netflix film to watch. It's the safest way to do it. And also, my great passion is cricket. So when I'm at home, I do two things. I either listen to music or I watch old sports videos. She has no interest in sport, and her music is English music of Simon and Garfunkel and Beatles. My music is Kishore Kumar and Mohammed. So even that doesn't mean. But I think opposites attract, so you live life the way you have.
Why do the Northeast get minimal or no coverage, while less significant events elsewhere gets coverage in news channels? It surely cannot be geographical reason now, because with the improvement in transport and communication, that's like off the chart. Is it political? Is it economical? I know that for a state like Nagaland, it's a very small state, it's a dot in the national political scenario. So why is it that way?
That's a great question, and that is the central question. I mean, I think that's a question that has often troubled me over the years. In this book, which is about 400 odd pages, maybe close to 500, I think. Close to 500, there are about 5 or 6 pages on Manipur.
Maybe less than that. Very few mention of Manipur.
No, there's Manipur, then there's also Manipur when I mentioned Bimal Aikojam, but basically about 5-6 pages at best about Manipur. You're right, we could, maybe 4 or 5 out of 4. But even if it is 4 or 5 out of 400, that's 1/100th. Right? 1/100th of the book is on a state of the Northeast. There may be the odd mention of a Hemanta Biswa Sarma somewhere, but that's about it. We have 543 Lok Sabha constituencies, right? Nagaland has one of them. So automatically, Manipur has 2. But out of 543, if I look at one constituency from Nagaland 2, that's also a dot. So if I were to argue on proportional basis that my book is 543 pages, I've got 3 pages or 4, I could try and defend myself, but it's a bad argument. Because at the end of the day, you're quite right. There is what I call, controversially, the tyranny of distance. This was a word used by an Australian writer in a book called Fatal Shore to explain why does Australia fall off the map of the world. Because Australia is just too far away. And somewhere down the line, I mean, it's not an excuse I'm offering, but I think it's an explanation that the further you are from Delhi, the less relevant you seem to be to the mainstream. So if there is a drain pipe that breaks in Noida, it becomes breaking news. If there are floods in Assam or in Mizoram like last year, it doesn't become breaking news unless hundreds of people have died. And you see, why has Manipur, it required tragically that video that came out of the woman being paraded naked, that suddenly shocked the nation, forced even parliament to debate, forced news channels to recognize what was happening in Manipur. I can claim with a clean conscience that I was at least referring to Manipur constantly even before that thing happened. I remember one of the things that I mentioned his story in the book, this Kuki MLA from the BJP called Bunga Walte, who was left to die a few kilometers away from the Chief Minister's residence, beaten up. And when I met him, he was living in a small house in Delhi, in a small colony, only with his family there, no one had come to see him. And it was only after I aired the story that some of the BJP MPs rang me up, can you give us the address? Please think of this, there's a BJP spokesperson here. But honestly, think about it, right? So it's not just me, even the MPs of the so-called India national MPs didn't recognize that their own fellow MP was beaten and was left to die in a small colony flat in Delhi. But there is a problem. And I mean, tyranny of distance can only be, you're right, now with communication. I didn't know, honestly, I didn't know that there was a direct flight now from Dimapur to Delhi. Right? But the moment there is, I have no excuse anymore. Right? Tomorrow, God forbid, something happens here. You know, we should be making sure that we have people here covering whatever big event happens in your part of the world. We have one correspondent. We now have an India Today Northeast. My friend Karma Paljor has East Mojo. But how do you integrate all of that with the national media is a big challenge. I have a concept. I'm waiting for someone who's rich enough, maybe the Chief Minister of Nagaland, who will sponsor what I believe is the future. There are 730 districts of this country, 730. Can we have one stringer for each district? And you create a website where I click a button and I can know 5 stories from my district in the language of that district through AI. One day someone will crack this. It's going to happen very soon, I'm sure. Unless you do that, the Northeast will never get its due. Because the Northeast is just still seen as sort of somehow not on the national consciousness. Hindi heartland dominates. You know, you feel left out. I'll tell you, I remember you said you were working in Hyderabad, but I remember in Chennai, about 7-8 years ago, there were terrible floods. And I went to cover those floods. And I remember one person coming, oh, you have suddenly remembered that Tamil Nadu exists. So I said, no. And they were angry about it. They said, you know, did it require the floods to reach this level where so many people have died for you to wake up? You know, all these days we've been waiting for you to make it the big story. And so there is a feeling of anger even in the south, like there is in the northeast. Please, you know, it's not just here. Large parts of the country, the so-called, the further you are away from Delhi, more and more Jharkhand for example, or Chhattisgarh, they also feel completely left out. I mean, Chhattisgarh, the only time we refer to it is when there is a Naxal attack. In Jharkhand, for many years, the only time we would refer to it was because Mahendra Singh Dhoni, India's cricket captain, was from Jharkhand. So suddenly there was a reporter placed in Jharkhand whose only job was to follow Dhoni. But there is more to Jharkhand than that. So it's not just Nagaland. I mean, that's why it's just that the further away you are from Delhi. I'll tell you another interesting story. Arvind Kejriwal got so much of mileage. Right? At the end of the day, he was Chief Minister of Delhi, which is only one city-state in a way. And we used to project him as this incorruptible leader and all that. So one day I met the Goa Chief Minister and he was taking his own bag from the luggage trolley on the aircraft. So I said, sir, very interesting. You're showing what a simple man you are. He turned to me, yes, I am also simple. Ayieno Kechü is not the only person who's a simple man. But because he lives in Delhi, you give him all the publicity, now you're seeing me lifting my badge. So politicians also of many states feel, that they are left out. I mean, your chief minister, as I recognized just now, has been in power for 2 decades. Now how much does the rest of the country know about him? Right? But we know, I remember Mr. Apang was in Arunachal for many years. But how much do we know about their life? We will write books on someone who's been a chief minister for 10 years, but we won't write something on someone who's been a chief minister for 20. So it's not just the Northeast problem, it's an India problem. And it's a media problem.
So is there your book, when it comes to cinema, we have Apu trilogy as a landmark in the world of cinema. When it comes to books on Indian politics, we have your books now, a series of your books. Is there going to be a tetralogy? And the title of your book, The Election That Surprised Us. Whom did it surprise? The pollsters, the political parties, or the media houses?
Everyone. But in a way, again, is linked to the previous question of distance. All of us sit in a studio in Noida, air-conditioned studios close to Delhi, and we think we know everything that's happening in India. And therefore we say, oh, if Mr. Modi says 400 seats, oh, BJP must be getting 400 seats, right? So, it surprised people sitting in TV studios. It surprised the pollsters also. We are a country of 100 crore voters. We've just touched 100 crore voters. I mean, the United Kingdom is a country of 6.8 crore people. And we have 100 crore voters. Now, can a pollster accurately measure what's happening across India? So pollsters also got surprised. Politicians also got surprised. Because politicians also nowadays, many of them, move around with a certain arrogance, disconnected with the people. Right? Many of them just, and I mentioned the story, for example, of Ayodhya. When the Ram temple was built, the BJP lost in Ayodhya. Where the town where the Ram temple was built, because, everywhere across the temples were lit up, there was this grand temple function held, so everybody thought there's a Ram wave. Not realizing, and I mentioned the story of an auto rickshaw driver who was actually far more accurate than all of us. Because he actually takes people around, he knows the town. Because in building many temples, there are a lot of the old houses have been demolished. There are a lot of people, there are jobless today. So there are, in every part of the country, this is a country of 1 million mutinies. Different parts of this country, something or the other is bubbling in different ways. How can we sitting in Delhi decide? So this election surprised all of us who thought we were gods. My first chapter is the gods that failed. The media thinks media wants to play God. Nation wants to know. Actually, only those who sit in, only those who sit in TV studios want to know. So, the media plays God, politicians play God, pollsters play God, political analysts play God. So I think all these gods fail, and I thank God for it. Because all of us need to have we need to put our feet on the ground. We are not, how will any of us sitting in a TV studio understand the complexity of this country called India? It's the most amazingly diverse country. And in America, if I'm a Democrat, I vote for the Democrats. If I'm a Republican, I vote for the Republicans. It's only in India where you may vote one election for the Congress. I mean, we just talked about Nagaland. In your assembly elections, clean sweep for NPP, NDPP, and NPF and NDPP. You have a Lok Sabha election, Congress wins. I don't think even the Congress knew what had happened. But they won Nagaland. Manipur, both the seats have gone to the Congress. Actually, the Congress didn't do too badly in the Northeast this time, without really doing anything on the ground. And that's India for you. The same voter who may well have voted for an NPF candidate in a Vidhan Sabha may well vote for Congress in Lok Sabha. And that happens across. Arvind Kejriwal, in previous elections, won in the Chief Minister's chair, but lost all the Lok Sabha seats in Delhi. So Indians are you never know what they're thinking. And now I've realized people don't tell the truth also to these pollsters. They don't want to, who are you? A lot of them, and I've realized the real truth when I go with the camera across India. A lot of people come, close to the camera and will sort of in loud voices say who they are voting for. I don't trust them anymore. The real people, they may well be voting for those parties, but they're party workers. The real people who tell you the truth are those silently, like this auto rickshaw driver, who actually told me the true story of what was happening in Ayodhya. About how there was this elderly candidate from a Dalit community, whom a lot of people thought was a better candidate than the BJP candidate. So a lot of locals who are silent are often more accurate than those who make a lot of noise.
You have covered election campaigns over the decades. How has the media changed in the way it covers politics and politicians? And also, in protecting diversity of media, are we diluting some elements of controlling the ethics of journalism?
You're asking very difficult questions. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. I think that's a very important question you ask. In a country as diverse as ours, how diverse is our national media? Is a question. The same five faces, I don't know how many of you watch television in the evening. As I said, you'll live longer if you don't. But the same five faces will pop out talking on every issue. They will one day talk about Aurangzeb. They will one day talk about Manipur. One day they will talk on women's wrestlers. And they will same 5 or 6 faces. There is no diversity within the media in terms of opinions. Right? So I think the problem is that the media also, and then you said how elections are covered. Elections are also covered much more from a Delhi point of view. How is Delhi seeing India? We aren't hearing enough voices from below, of people. I travel, Maharashtra is one of my home states. My mother comes from Maharashtra. And in the election that took place in November last year, I made the effort to travel around. It's the only election I got right. Because I actually went and met lots of people. Now, among the people I met was a farmer's wife, whose husband had committed suicide. In a district called Amravati, which has the maximum farmer suicides in the country. More than 5,000, maybe more farmers have committed suicide in Amravati alone over the last decade. And her husband had committed suicide because he could not pay a 1 lakh rupee bank loan. Right? Now, what happens is when most journalists go to cover elections now, they follow a politician. They don't go to the person, the people, the voters, the real voters. You go to party workers or you go to politicians. Now and I remember going to a village which was deep inside. It took us 1 hour, 1.5 hours to reach. You don't do that anymore. Earlier, that used to be our staple diet. Go and talk to people. Now it's all about the same politicians. Either there are 5 heads popping out in a TV studio, or there are these, the Prime Minister, for example, gave 80 interviews, 80, and every interview would get plastered. But what about talking to people? So I think like that farmer's wife, we have now stopped hearing voices from below. And that's the big change that's taken place. Plus, I think, of course, the biggest change is technology. With the rise of social media and Instagram. I mean, my children follow politics on Instagram. And I say, how are you following politics on Instagram? No, so I mean, in this age of Instagram, today's news is tomorrow's history. I sound old when I say, but I worry about the children and the next generation, because you're being bombarded by information in real time with no time to press the pause button. We have what I call a WhatsApp university now. Everybody's on WhatsApp. And every political party is bombarding you with videos on WhatsApp. And those videos are influencing your, maybe your thought processes, your opinion. And it's very dangerous, because where is the time even to verify is the video true or not? I remember during the Manipur violence, someone sent me a video saying, why are you not covering these atrocities that are going on in Manipur? So I said, what atrocities? And they sent me this video of this woman who was with a bullet being put through her head. And she was, killed in the middle of a road. And they said, look at what is happening in Manipur. As it turned out, that video was not from Manipur, but from Myanmar. Undated video from some previous thing that might have happened 10 years ago. But imagine if that video was going viral in real time to 100,000 people. And the impact that, so the media landscape has changed. We are in this multimedia world where there is no time for even fact checking. So all of that affects the way we cover politics, it affects the political narrative. Politicians get away with telling lies. I'm not pointing to you, but I'm just saying in general, politicians get away now by, the only good news is Donald Trump makes us look good. I mean, the amount of lies that are put out by people in public life now, and there's no cross-checking. I mean, I mentioned in my book in the COVID chapter, the World Health Organization says more than 40 lakh Indians died during COVID. The government of India puts the figure at about 4.5 or 4.8 lakhs. What's the truth? How do I find the truth? Who's going to tell me the truth? And if I tell the truth, will I be branded anti-national? Because I'm telling the truth. So we live in very difficult times in that sense.
Coming to your book, you have mentioned, you have given information about some political giants, but you have not given enough information. What I want to know, what are the workings of the political giants that shape India's democracy? And
the giants, meaning?
The political giants like Amit Shah and Modi, how do they shape India's democracy? What goes beyond the headlines? Because a lot of news seem to be filtered. And are there pushbacks in the newsroom?
You've asked one or two questions. First of all, there are lots of stories about Modi and Amit Shah. If you look at all three books, in fact, together, it's almost like 1,500 pages where they are the dominant characters. I mean, I mentioned in this book, for example, which I think is a fascinating story, how Amit Shah won his first ever election, which tells you a lot about the man. Amit Shah fought his first election as a student politician in the 1980s. He was contesting an election where his opponent was a woman. In a class where 50%, it was a class election, a student election, half the electorate was women, half was men. Pitted against him was a woman candidate. So Amit Shah and his friends were worried that all the women will vote for the women candidate. Then even if a handful of men vote for the woman, she will win elections. That's why women usually do well now in elections. That's another question which we can talk about. But so Amit Shah's people got worried. What did they do? This is 1980s, pre-mobile age. They got the addresses of all the girl students, or the phone numbers of their parents. Either rang them up or sent chits. Don't send your daughters to school, to college on the election day. There's going to be violence. 20-25 girls didn't land up. Amit Shah won by 5-6 votes. Now this is the mind where it's a mind where winner takes all. Whatever it takes, we have to win the election. What they say in Hindi, Sam, Dam, Danda, Bhe. Either you bribe someone, you divide someone, do whatever it takes but win an election. That's the mind of these people.
Are we an electoral democracy with a level playing field, or are we a majoritarianism democracy?
Ma'am, you've raised the question which is a central theme of the book. I believe that our electoral democracy lacks a level playing field. And I'm not saying this started only now. It's always existed. It's now become even more so. And there are various forces which I explain in the book which are responsible for this. The misuse of money power, the misuse of state power, the misuse of media power, all of which means that our electoral democracy is reduced to come, vote, give your vote once every 5 years, go back, and then you have no power left. And to my mind, that's not true democracy. True democracy, I should be able to hold my leaders accountable for what they promise, what they say, not just once in 5 years, but at least some kind of an audit. There is no level playing field. Please understand, the Congress party, 1 month before the 2024 elections, the income tax department froze their bank accounts. and sent them notices dating back to 1990s. Is that a level playing field? I mean, the bank accounts were eventually defrozen, but just think of, congressmen were rushing to the bank to get them to defreeze their account instead of fighting an election. It's not level playing field. It's like a lime and spoon race in school, where one side is at the 80-meter mark, yours at the starting point. And it's happening in every place. Look, let's be honest, what Delhi does is happening in the states. It's happening in Bengal, it's happening in Nagaland. Whoever is in power knows now how to use power or misuse power. It's very difficult now to defeat a sitting party. A ruling party as a youth, they control the police. In Delhi elections, all the opposition candidates tell me that their workers were getting phone calls from the police. I don't want to see you tomorrow campaigning. Otherwise, hum case kar denge. Now in a slum area, you get panic. Okay, we won't do it. Or money was being distributed. When I went to the south on one of my book tours, one of the audience had one of the MLAs from Telangana. And he comes to me afterwards and says, I had said, politics has reached the stage where 50 crores is spent per MLA for an MLA seat. So he comes to me afterwards and tells me, Mr. Sardesai, you got that wrong. I spent 75. Imagine, you're spending 75 crores for an MLA election. Then I want return on investment. So the whole notion of electoral, we have become what I call a cash and carry democracy. Democracy, C-R-A-Z-Y. Can someone who's an honest professional today, there are exceptions no doubt, but otherwise it's not easy today for an honest professional to survive in politics, retaining his or her sense of ethics. Very difficult now. And I really, I say this only half in jest. If the great Mahatma Gandhi contested today, he might lose his deposit. Because he will not want to play caste politics, he will not want to play religion politics, he will not want to spend more money than what you are allowed to spend. And he might get defeated. Because in Goa, where I come from, you can buy an election. Because the average size of a constituency there is about 25,000. I only need 8-10,000 to win. If I get 10,000 votes, I pay them 2,000 rupees each, I have won. Is that the way politics should be played? And that's the worrying part. That's what worries me, that we're not looking enough at how do we make we are such a wonderful country, 1.4 billion talented people. Why aren't the best and brightest coming to politics? Why don't the best and brightest people enter politics in this country? Why aren't the young, across the world, the young are entering, you are having younger and younger prime ministers. Why is it in India that you have to be 60 before you're even thought of seriously? So there is a problem.
I'm going to quote from your book. You wrote about smart talking, sharply dressed, reading of numbers and building laptops. You're mentioning about the election consulting strategies. We seem to have corporatized pre-election activities and election campaign. How do you think it affects grassroots political movements?
That's another great question. I think Nagaland that way is much better off than many parts of the country where you still have local leaders deciding what will happen. In many other parts of the country, these election consultants who are paid large amounts of money are the ones who are creating these WhatsApp groups, creating these fake campaigns. And yes, at one level it is the corporatizing of elections in this country, but I am still, look, if corporatization alone worked, then all these big businessmen should become our leaders. There's a limit to it also. You see, I think at the end of the day, there is no substitute for the human connect. And one of my chapters in the book is Democracy Zinda Hai, or Democracy is Alive, Stories of Hope. There's this young Dalit woman, 26-year-old, mother of two, who won an election in Bharatpur in Rajasthan, defeating a big candidate who was the Chief Minister's nominee, only by crowdsourcing, by Instagram, by going door to door, knocking on doors. there is still space for the human connect. So while corporatization is worrying, because with corporatization comes big money. You know, when I hear some of the amounts these consultants are being paid, I mean, these are staggering amounts to be paying for an election campaign. And many of the old politicians tell me, we don't want consultants, we will work because we have a connect. And maybe they do. The older politicians have lived, you know, by the fact that they are 24/7. They will, you can go to them when there's a marriage in the family or a death in the family. You can go to them for nursery admissions. A lot of politicians tell me their biggest concern is parents coming to please get our children in nursery school. You know, we treat up even our MPs like municipal councillors now. And one of my worries is that actually, you know, like North Bangalore constituency, you'll be surprised, has an electorate of 30 lakhs. How can someone of 30 lakh, one person can, how does he represent 30 lakhs? Very difficult. The average size of a constituency in the United Kingdom is only 5,000 or 6,000, so you have a direct connect. So because you have such a large 30 lakh constituency, the corporate consultants come in because they then try to manage the constituency for you. But I don't think that's the answer. There is no substitute for the human connect, and we are now losing out on that. So, you know, good luck to the corporate consultants, but I think there's a limit to that kind of politics as well.
Your book tackles a lot of heavy topics. You wrote about the COVID pandemic, you wrote about the farmers' revolt, and then a whole chapter on the ED. But in between all these things, I saw elements of humor in your writing. For instance, you wrote about how journalists who were waiting to get a soundbite from Amit Shah were instead offered a plate of dhokla. You know, so there are other, you know, like instances which is kind of really funny, and I really laughed out loud. Were they intentional, or did they sneak in when you were not looking?
No, look, I think over the years, doing journalism, you become an observer and a storyteller. You know, these are stories of people. And at the end of the day, Amit Shah may be this frightening, forbidding figure, but he's also someone who will offer you dhoklas in Parliament. And I've tried to, in that sense, you know, there is always that observation that a book should have. A writer, I think, should observe. The more you observe as a writer, I think the better you become. I believe that I'm not claiming to be an intellectual in this book. I don't want to get you mentioned majoritarianism. Those are debates I do talk about, but they're not the central. My central theme is to tell stories. Like I tell the story of a Maharashtra minister who couldn't sleep at night because he was worried that the ED would arrest him. And he finished a full bottle of Blue Label whiskey with me. And at the end of it, he switched sides, joined the government, and then rings me up and says, now let's really celebrate with whiskey, because now no ED is going to come. Now, he's being human at one level, right? I can imagine any of us, right? We are worried that, will the ED come knocking on my door? But, I'm sleeping peacefully once I've switched sides. So I think the human element is you have to humanize people. Not easy to humanize Narendra Modi, but you have to try. You have to try. I mean, he's a remarkable politician, but tough to understand. He's a very complex human being, as I mentioned in the book. I mean, one of my favorite stories. I mean, he called himself a non-biological god almost during the campaign. My mother, I don't know, my mother has passed away. Now I think that God has sent me down. Which is all. But I mentioned very interestingly, when the new Parliament building was built a couple of years ago, all the ministers dressed up in their best because they were told that there would be a photo op. When the actual photo happened, the only people in the photo was Mr. Modi and those sadhus and sons around him. All the ministers were told they are not needed. Now, that's a very complex person who doesn't want to have a photo op with his own cabinet ministers. But, now do I mention it or not? Every time I would write this, I was worried, will the ED come to my house? Am I crossing a certain boundary of what is acceptable or what is not? But look, I think that is all part of storytelling. When you write a book, I think I want people 20 years from now to know the times in which we lived. I was a young kid, as I mentioned, in 1977, but there are very few books written about that time. So I hope 20 years from now, someone who's not following news on Instagram like my children may actually say, okay, I'll read a book. And maybe in some library in Dimapur or Kohima or anywhere else, someone who wants to know about what happened in India between 2019 and 24, what happened during COVID, what happened during the farmers' agitation in Manipur, will have some sense of the times in which we live.
Has the politics of Hindutva normalized under brand Modi or Modi Raj, as you call it in the book?
Wonderful question. Yes, it has. And I think at the end of the day, that is to me, as you want to call me a secular constitutionalist, very troubling. As I mentioned more than once today, for me the greatest strength of this country is its diversity. I use a Hindi line for what, when people ask me from abroad, ask me, describe in India in one line, which you can't really. I said the fundamental philosophy of this country is Jio or Jeene Do, live and let live. I think Hindutva politics, with its sort of majoritarian sort of spirit, somewhere or the other does exactly what you're saying. It normalizes the exact opposite of Jio or Jeene Do, where you actually tell people what they can eat, what they can wear, who they can marry, where they have to pray, and that is not India. And there is, for example, someone once said, and there is a hypocrisy to it. I remember the MP Asad Owaisi said, for the BJP today, beef is yummy in the northeast but mummy in Uttar Pradesh. Right? But the normalization of a mindset that says, if I marry outside my community, if there's a Hindu-Muslim marriage, is it love jihad? I may have married of my own free will. Right? Who are you to decide who I should marry? So I think that normalization is very worrying. And there is a chapter, how Hindutva ki sarkar hai. You can't, what happened in Jammu and Kashmir? You want to withdraw Article 370, that's fine. That's a special provision that was only meant for a finite period of time. But why deny them statehood? How can you overnight just take away? And Kashmiris feel resentful. They don't tell you openly. Again, as I said, you have to actually go into the house and sit with them, and then you realize how they feel. But that's what troubles me. India is not a country. India is a country. You want to have beef, please have beef. You want to eat pork, have pork. You want to have a vegetarian meal, do it. That is the celebration of this country called India. And I hope that doesn't, that we don't normalize exactly the opposite of that. Where the state will decide what you eat, who you marry, what you wear. That would be terrible. And that is the one, if I, that would not make India the joyful place it can be. If the state starts telling you how to live your life, then we become a Hindu Pakistan, which is not what this country was ever meant to be. This country was, and I celebrate many of our constitution makers, that at least they recognize the power of one person, one vote. In Pakistan, the minorities don't even have an equal, they really don't have that sense of equality before the law. There's a sense of separateness, separate electorates. In India, you don't. In India, we're supposed to be one. So, that's my lament. So you touched a raw nerve, in a way, because think about it. The BJP has more than 300 MPs, or had previously, now 240. Not one Muslim, not one. Right? Christian missionaries are targeted. And they're supposed to be engaging in conversion. I keep telling the people in my office, it's quite interesting, because we put out these stories about conversion and missionaries as if they're some kind of villains out there. Most of my office every year in the month of March, April comes to me, sir, we need one favor. can you speak to that Father Agnell school to get our children in school? I said, why do you want to go to Father Agnell school if you think that they all... No sir, it's the best school. They give quality education at a low cost. The hypocrisy of it all, right? It's staggering at one level. And I hope it never gets normalized. I hope it never gets normalized. It would take away the essence and the joy of being in this great country.
Chapter 4 of your book, I'm going to go really quick because I got the signal to.
Okay.
Chapter 4 of your book, you wrote about the farmers' revolt. In the recent past, we have seen a lot of revolts in the country, such as against a Citizenship Amendment Act, farmers' support for MSP, Manipur protest. There has been a lot of protests. Can these protests be seen as a failure of representation democracy, or is it an essential part of it?
You're asking wonderful questions which are at the height of the dilemmas of our time, but I think it shows that India is still a vibrant democracy. I mean, the Olympic wrestlers, for example, the women wrestlers who protested, they protested in the heart of the national capital. They were eventually pulled away by the police as if they were common criminals. But at least it shows that there is some kind of a pushback in places. Right? The Punjab farmers who protested. Protest is part of being Indian. You cannot criminalize dissent. You cannot let me be very honest, we are in Nagaland, right? Over the years, your history has been littered with so many protests. Now, they may have taken forms of militancy, whatever you want to call it. Someone will call them terrorists, someone will call them militants. But they were people who were protesting because they felt strongly about a particular issue. Eventually, the Indian state has to accommodate all those forces, has to listen to them. Today, we are in dialogue with the same people in Nagaland who maybe 20 years ago were seen as, people who were among the most wanted. But a country must, India's strength is accomplished. So all these protests are a good sign. I hope the day never go, I hope we never see a day when there are no protests in this country. Yes, it may slow down some of the progress that we would otherwise like, but it's okay. It's okay. You have to allow Indians to express themselves in different ways. As long as they don't resort to violence, I think every protest in this country has space, and we must allow more space for it.
I'm sure you're aware that you are seen as anti-BJP. Your book has a strong tone. Some might see your book as a response to past events, and I'm sure you know what events I'm talking about. So can this be considered as a form of literary revenge? Or is there a different motivation to it?
Why don't you leave the Chief Minister's office, come to Delhi, do the interviews, you do them much better than I do. I love the word you've used, literary revenge. Look, first of all, I think it's important, those who do read this book, and I hope you will, if you ever have the time and the inclination, try and read all three. Starting with 2014, you can read it in any order. 2014 was the election that changed India. And the reaction I got to that was, oh, you have given Mr. Modi so much of importance. And I got almost a similar reaction in 2019, how Modi won India. And I told the opposition guys, I said, look, he's won the election. He is the hero. You can't suddenly, I have to explain why are people voting for him in large numbers. This time, I've taken a slight step back because I think the last 5 to 10 years, if I look at the arc of 10 years, there are aspects of this government, like some of which you expressed just now, majoritarianism and all, which trouble me, which should be expressed. The way the media has been managed. The rise of these 2 or 3 businessmen who seem to control everything around us. Now, is that making the book anti-Modi or anti-BJP or literary revenge? No. I say look at all the 3 books and it tells you a period of 20 years, I believe, in India where so much has changed. This is a period of great dramatic change. The Congress party is in decline, the BJP has risen, Hindutva has got normalized, Relations between Hindus and Muslims at various stages have been stressed. We've seen very, very dramatic times in the life of this country. Now, I'm an observer. Yes, I may have strong views on certain issues, and from time to time, they may creep through. In this book, I think they creep much more than previous books. I have sedition cases against me. And I start my media chapter telling my story. I mean, I put out a tweet about a farmer who had allegedly been shot dead during the farmer protest. It turned out later that he had died when a tractor overturned. Now, I didn't deliberately put out that tweet. I may have got it wrong. Was I being anti-national? That I have sedition cases, same identical FIR in 6 different states? And one of my colleagues said the police has decided to arrest you. Now, did I write this book because I wanted to take revenge for that? No. I got up at 5 a.m. in the morning for 15 months to write a book. Over 15 months, this book started in 2023. So it wasn't revenge, it was my belief that there are some things which are best said through books that I cannot say in a TV show. In a TV show, I'm very conscious, can I be balanced? Do I give this guy the same amount of time? BJP and Congress must get equal time. A writer can't think of being neutral in that sense. A writer has to be honest. I mean, my last chapter in the book is on the media.
Yeah.
And one of my problems was, can I be honest about my own media? Being in the media, I'm in the belly of the beast. Can I write honestly about the beast? And I said, if I don't, then I'm being dishonest. So I think writing gives you space to be more honest with yourself. You can actually start thinking. You're sitting 5 a.m. in the morning, and it's the best time to write. I mean, and each one of you in this room, I think, has a book in you. But if you want to write a book, try and write it early morning. Your mind is uncluttered. If you had a good night's sleep, there's no noise, no breaking news, no WhatsApps, no emails coming. So those 3 hours, 5 to 8, are the best. I think that's why the older generation, our parents and grandparents wrote so much. And they wrote such wonderful letters. Sometimes I see the letters that were written in those days by our parents and grandparents. Writing as well. Everybody just quickly sending 10 words with some emoji. And the emoji becomes, so I mean, I think, it was not literary revenge. That's what, and it was just an attempt to be honest with myself, more than even with to be honest with my conscience. I want, if my grandchildren, if I see them, I want to tell them, your granddad wrote these books then, and this was his honest way of contributing to the public discourse.
I'm sure we are out of time, but I'm going to ask him one last question, please. You are a journalist, a celebrity news anchor, a news editor, political analyst, and an author. What do you think will be your lasting impact, and how would you like history to remember you?
Whenever I'm asked this question, my answer is, I don't want to think of how people will remember me 50 years from now. I am a journalist at the core of who I am. And if I'm remembered as a decent human being, I'll be very happy. I think, one of the things that is missing in public life is decency. I remember Manmohan Singh passed away a couple of months ago, and someone asked me to write an obituary. And I was thinking, how do I sort of give, what is the defining quality of Manmohan Singh? A lot of people called him weak, he doesn't really run the government, all of which may be true. But there was one quality that he had which struck me always whenever I met him, which was decency. How do I define decency? I don't know sometimes. But it's just the ability to, he never pushed his family into politics, which he could have. And the main thing was, you could criticize him and he would not treat you as an enemy. So I once wrote a piece on corruption in his government, and I happened to suddenly be at some function where he was also there. I was trying to avoid his gaze. And he turns to me, you've written this article in the newspaper, you've been very critical of the government and me. I said, yes, sir. Oh, very good. We should talk about these things. It's interesting that, I agree with you. There's a lot of corruption. I mean, here was someone. Today, if I did it, I would be probably charged with sedition. I'd again have a sedition case, or I'd be suspended from a job. So I think decency is something which if I can be decent, and decency as judged by the people around me, by my family. I mean, at the end of the day, who are the people who know you best? Is I think your family and your close friends and your peers. What someone on social media has to say about me is not going to change my life. I remember today, because of this Riya Chakrabarti interview, suddenly people are saying, you deserve credit for giving Riya a voice. I said, I don't deserve any credit. The credit should go to Riya for speaking out. But we all go back to dust. Ashes to ashes and dust to dust. You could be Ambani or Adani, or you could be any one of us in the room. Eventually, we all have to meet our maker. So I think we should live, and therefore I tell young people, just live in the present. Who knows what tomorrow brings? Who knows what tomorrow brings? So live in the present and you'll be okay. So I don't want to think of legacy. We leave this to the politicians. I want a legacy, I want a statue. I mean, our politicians build statues when they are in politics. Forget about after Mayawati built statues while she was Chief Minister of UP. Normally across the world you build statues after, as your Chief Minister built a statue. I was worried about that. But why do you need statues? I mean, I don't think Ambedkar wants to be judged by the number of statues built in his name. He wants to be judged by his remarkable scholarship and his life.
Okay, so we will now take questions from the audience. If there's any. If not, I will happily go and ask some more questions. I have so many questions to ask. Yes, please.
So I have two questions. One is the
Privilege of being a BJP spokesperson.
thank you for that. And that's because the media secretary to the CM is asking you, such interesting questions. We've been in partner with the present chief minister since 2003.
Yes.
And unlike other states in the northeast, we've not flown with the river, in the sense that we've had regional governments when the Congress was in power in the center, and we were in opposition. So it's not like the first time. So just to give you some context of where she's coming from. So it may be a good lead. My question is, number one, what do you think of the debate on delimitation, especially the north versus south? It's interesting for us because, again, in terms of number, northeast is very few and far between. We don't reach the mark if it at all goes as per the electoral and the numbers. Number two, because you mentioned that you got this Maharashtra election right recently, I want to ask you, what changed between the Lok Sabha election and the Assembly election? And what were the main factors on the ground that really changed the entire election results? Two questions.
Okay. Both very interesting. The first is delimitation, which I think is a major question. You cannot penalize any state for getting population stabilization right. Just because the South has done so much better in controlling population doesn't mean that in future they will get fewer seats in the Lok Sabha. That's unacceptable. So I think delimitation strikes at the core of the belief of the southern states at the moment that their political influence will go down because they will be penalized for having better social indicators. And what it therefore needs is a dialogue between North and South, or between the center and the South. The southern states also account for over 60% of the national income, right? And they are now turning around and saying, where are we getting the financial resources from the center, even though we are contributing 60% of the total revenue? So it's about financial devolution of powers, it's about greater political influence, and its cultural identity as well, right? We don't want, the southern states are saying, we don't want Delhi to decide everything for us. So delimitation is bringing out a wider angst or anxieties that people in the southern states, maybe even in the northeast, will have, of domination by Delhi and the Hindi heartland. So I think that's at the core of it, and it can be settled through dialogue. That's the only way. The second question you posed was on Maharashtra. I mean, again, this is the fascinating thing. Lok Sabha elections in June, the opposition wins, BJP loses. 4 months later, state election swept by the BJP and its allies, opposition loses. 2 or 3 things changed. One of the biggest changes was the woman voter. I mean, on my cover of the book is a woman this time. Because I think one of the biggest changes taking place in Indian politics is the rise of the woman voter. I'm glad to see a woman politician, one of the first 2 MLAs of Nagaland. I hope Nagaland elects many more women. Because how else do you represent half the population of the country? So the BJP brought in 1,500 rupees per woman for those who earn below a certain income, below 2,50,000 annually. More than 2 crore women, out of a total 4 crore women electorate, got the benefit of it. Over 5 months, they got 7,500. Now, I may see it as a bit of a bribe. Then you suddenly decided I'm giving women 1,500 a month. But the woman saw it as a sign of their assertion, a recognition of their identity. Made a huge difference. Also, the BJP has the most incredible machine. Their ability to micromanage, go down to the last mile, talk to voters, course correct, be flexible is far better than the Congress. The Congress is like their old giant elephant, and therefore is unwilling to change. BJP realized what mistakes they had made in June, corrected them over 4 months, put all their the RSS, which had not participated in the Lok Sabha to the same extent, got fully involved in Maharashtra. And yes, they played a bit of Hindu-Muslim politics as well, to consolidate the Hindu vote. All of that benefited the BJP is the mightiest election machine, I believe, in the history of the democratic world. Not just India. I mean, only the Chinese Communist Party can compete with it, and the Chinese Communist Party is in an authoritarian state. Right? The BJP, they have, every booth has a WhatsApp group. They are right down to that micro level. They have huge resources. They use them very well. So I think you have to also give the BJP credit for the way, plus they know how to crush the opposition. Half the opposition leaders were worried about ED and what else might happen to them. So there are a variety of factors, but principally I would say, and let's be honest, we are in the age of Hindutva. For the next 20-30 years, the BJP is going nowhere. Narendra Modi may still be Prime Minister at 97 in 2047. He may not be alive. Whether he's alive or not there, the BJP is not going anywhere. The Congress was in power for so many decades. What is to stop the BJP?
Anyone else?
Yes, sir.
Your wife,
Yes.
Madam Sagarika, she talks about parliamentary democracy. And I know that she subscribes the socialism and secularism.
Not socialism, but secularism, yes.
I think she also subscribes socialism.
Okay.
By the way, she talks in the parliament. Do you also subscribe the same ideology, or you differ from her?
I subscribe to constitutional secularism in the belief that every Indian, irrespective of religion, must have equal rights. I don't subscribe to socialism. I believe socialism results in the state running the lives of people. I believe one of India's strengths should be to unleash the energies of people in terms of their entrepreneurial energies. Old style, but at the same time, India cannot afford not to be a welfare state. Because millions of Indians still live below the poverty line. We are still such an unequal society. 10% of Indians control 70% of our national income. So that doesn't mean I believe in socialism, but I do believe that we need to create equal opportunities. Someone asked me once, if you were Prime Minister for a day, what would the one thing you would want? And I said, honestly, if you want, I believe that the only way is equal opportunity in education. If India wants to move to the next level, you need to double incomes in education. China has 6 universities in the top 50 in the world. India has 0. China is focusing now on artificial intelligence and building a future technological superpower. We are worried whether a temple or a mosque existed 200, 300 years ago. Or some parts of this country are. So, I don't know whether she will agree with a little bit of this. My wife believes that, I mean, this is her view, which I don't know. She believes the BJP is fundamentally anti-constitution. That the BJP is a party which believes in a majoritarian Indian state. That the majority Hindus must have a dominant influence. I don't believe in that. I believe the BJP is a political party like any other. But I worry that if the BJP does not follow constitutional principles, then I will have a huge problem with the way they function.
But you also mentioned about just now, you also mentioned about majoritarian.
Yes?
So do you not think that majoritarian is taking over the democracy?
I remain, sir, an optimist. I believe that even if, while, yes, there is a majoritarian tendency at the moment in this country, this too shall pass. That eventually India is bigger than these people who think they speak for one community. Honestly, sir. India is a bouquet, which there's a rose, there's an orchid, there are thorns. Sometimes the thorns come to the fore. Someone says something crazy, ridiculous, extreme, and we think that is the only way. That is, everyone thinks like us. That's not true. I said even in Ayodhya the BJP lost. If we were such a majoritarian country, how is it that in the home of Ram you lost? Because caste also matters, not just religion. There are various fractures in our society. So nothing, and most importantly, sir, nothing is permanent in this country. We are a millennial society. When I went to America, they told me, oh, you must see this, there's a very old old monument, it's 18th century. So I said, here it's 18th century AD, in India it's 18th century BC. Indians are a millennial. What is 10 years in the life of a country? So at the moment it seems majoritarianism will take over. No, I don't think so. I actually think India will push back if you tell Indians what to wear, what to dress, what to eat, who to marry after a point. Indians will say sorry. So I think it's a warning, I would say, for anyone who wants to push majoritarianism. There will be a pushback. Temporarily there may not be, but eventually there will be.
Thank you. I have so many questions to ask, but no time. I think there is no time.
No, think about Nagaland. Think about Nagaland itself, right? The BJP has adjusted to the NPP or to the party, NDPP to the party. They've adjusted to the parties of Nagaland, right?
Yes, yes.
So beef is yummy in Nagaland. It's mummy in Uttar Pradesh, right? Where is the majoritarianism in that? They've got to be flexible. India is bigger than individuals, is always my belief. Individuals are not, Narendra Modi will eventually have to go, someone else will come. India is bigger, India will go on.
Let's take one or two questions
Yes,
from
sure.
the side of the audience.
Yes,
Yeah.
I have a question.
sure.
Just because the national
Yeah,
spokesperson is speaking, I'm also taking the speech.
Alliance partner.
And that's fine.
Junior Alliance Party.
We are the junior alliance.
Yeah, junior.
Yes. I'm a newbie politician, very, very new to politics. One thing, the biggest challenge as a politician is people being very judgmental. I joined politics, and I'm sure many, many people who join politics, for them, they want to do something good. They want to contribute something good. So they join, but people are judgmental. So it's just been 2 years, but I always get this thing, you politicians. So I get very hurt. I have not reached that point where, that is. But my question, I have two questions. My question is, you meet many, many women leaders, political leaders. How are women political leaders different from the men politicians? That's one question. The other question is your book, The Election That Surprised India. As a BJP alliance partner, we believe in Prime Minister's leadership, and we appreciate and acknowledge the good things that he's doing for the country. You have mentioned about David and Goliath. The voter is David versus Goliath. So you, in this conversation itself, you have also mentioned that you think Modi will continue, maybe till 47, who knows. This time, the election was not because Congress had a good plan. They had no plan. But there was a miscalculation, not because of an event, but so many other things. That's also mentioned in the book. For the next election, my question is, for the next election, at the rate Congress is going, I don't think there will be any plans. Considering if the leadership remains the same, I don't think there's going to be any plan. How do you think, supposing the voter surprises us again in the next election, in 29th election, what will be the state of the country? What do you think will be the state of the country if the voters surprise us again?
I'll answer your first question first. Women politicians. Please appreciate, in a country of where 50% are women, 543 MPs, women are still around only 13%. There are about 60, 70 women politicians in all, MPs in the Lok Sabha. That's just over 12, 13%. 50% of population, 13% women in parliament. We still have all too few women in politics. Number two, women politicians to a large extent, leaders, women leaders, are often dependent on men to move ahead in politics. We are still a very patriarchal society. Look at all the women politicians. Indira Gandhi became Prime Minister because she was Jawaharlal Nehru's daughter. Sonia Gandhi became what she was, Congress's longest serving president, because she was Rajiv Gandhi's wife, Indira Gandhi's bahu, Jawaharlal Nehru, whatever, right? But part of the dynasty. Jayalalitha in Tamil Nadu became Chief Minister because she was MGR's heir, chosen heir. Mayawati became Chief Minister because she was Kashi Ram's chosen heir. Mamata Banerjee is an exception. A strange, and to her great credit, this you have to give her. She built a party on her own without any male support. It was her. She is the leader, and that's very unusual. So most women politicians in this country are still dependent on men for giving them a leg up and pushing them forward. I believe in general women, whether in media or in politics, are more empathetic than men. They genuinely, I think, in general, are able to connect at a human level better than men. This is a very broad generalization, but I mean, it doesn't mean women are not corrupt. Women politicians can be hugely corrupt. Jayalalitha and Mayawati are an example. Right? It's not as if women don't want to make money through politics, they do. But in general, I think women connect better, particularly with women themselves. I mean, this farmer's suicide story that I told you, I think a woman politician would be better able to relate to a farmer's widow than a man. So that is my point, and I think we need many more. And the good news is, this government is clever enough, and Modi is clever enough, that by the next election there will be 33% reservation for women in parliament. So you have a good chance. Right? I mean, the fact is there will be many more women politicians. The woman voter is here to stay. That's why, I mean, I just told the guy, think of a trend, my illustrator, and he showed this woman, vote for India. I mean, there's a finger which says almost, which has various connotations, we won't go into that. But in general it was, that the woman is here to stay. Your second question, ma'am, is very difficult to answer, to say what will happen in 2029. I'm not worried about India and the country. The Congress party should be more worried about itself than I am worried about them. You see, we in the media are more worried about the future of the Congress than they seem to be worried. And in fact, if any book has to be written, it should be the rise and fall of the Congress. Rahul Gandhi is a fifth generation dynast. His great-great-grandfather was Motilal Nehru, 1920s. It's not, we put the blame, the Congress's decline has been over the last 40 years. They have not won an election in India since 1984, a majority on their own. That's 40 years. And even 84 they won because Indira Gandhi was assassinated just before the election. So it is a party in decline.
So, sir, I'm not concerned about Congress.
Ah.
My question.
You're concerned of that? Yes.
My question is, if the voters surprise us again in 29 in a more thumping
For BJP.
for the others, not the BJP, what happens to the country?
What will happen? Nothing wrong. I mean, India, you know, someone wins an election, someone loses. I mean, my bigger concern is India should not go the Nagaland way where there is no opposition. That is my bigger concern. No, that should concern us. Every country, every state needs an opposition. I mean, honestly, I am surprised by the fact that you have no opposition. Because that is not a good, healthy sign. That is what we need to get away from. So who wins, who loses doesn't matter. India is, in my view, a coalition. Actually, India is best run when there is a coalition. Because then you have to reach out to people, talk. You see, India cannot be run, we cannot be a one country, one party, one leader, one religion country. That is not India. India is multicultural, multi-regional, religious, multi-region, federal. Why should, you can't discriminate in this in India between opposition ruled states and government ruled states as is happening in some states. So I am worried that India should not go the Nagaland way. I've given you a headline. You see, if there was someone for Nagaland Post writing, you should say, India cannot go the Nagaland way. And then I'll have the Nagaland police come to my hotel room tomorrow morning.
There's a reason by which we can discuss later why Nagaland is an opposition has come.
No, I'm sure that, I understand that and I know, but look, the very fact that Sharad Pawar or Ajit Pawar's party has 5 MPs here, when they have 5 MLAs, or 7, when they have no real connection with Nagaland, all of this is all, I'm just saying that I want to see a strong opposition. That's all I'm saying. We need a strong opposition.
Someone claimed that India's top psephologists or pollsters are pro-government, and that's why 2024 election they gave out exaggerated opinion poll which helped BJP party at large. So what's your thought on that, and how come people like Yogendra Yadav single-handedly give out the right figures?
So 2 parts to your question. First of all, you're not wrong, and I mentioned it in the book. There are pollsters who are also polling for the political party and were coming on television. So you're working for Amit Shah and Narendra Modi, but you're also coming on my channel and giving numbers. So there is a conflict of interest, which is not apparent. So it could be, but it could also be that they got it wrong. Right? At this moment, I can't judge them and say, you got it wrong because you were paid off. Right? So, I mean, I'm not going to say that, but yes, many of them do work for a political party and also come on TV. Yogendra Yadav got Lok Sabha right, but the same Yogendra Yadav comes from Haryana. And Haryana went to the election in September. That's why India surprises you all the time. So in September, I ring him up, say, it's your home state, what's happening? And by then he had got Lok Sabha right, so everybody thought he'd get. So he tells me, Rajdeep, cyclone for Congress. Cyclone? Congress lost. The same Yogendra Yadav who gets Lok Sabha with 543 constituencies right, gets Haryana with 80 constituencies wrong, his home state. Again a lesson in India, best to stay humble and don't predict too much. No one is God. This country has lots of gods we worship, so you don't have to play God. Okay, I'll try and give short answers.
Yes, very short question, sir. Generally, during your election campaigns, while visiting the state, I've seen you having breakfast with the politicians and like getting food. So, Nagas, we are proud of our culture, our food habits. Do you think of having some kind of sharing local delicacy with other people?
Look, the way to my heart is through my stomach. But I will tell you, I do a program called Elections on My Plate. And I felt terrible because it was in February 2023 that Nagaland was going to the polls. At the same time, Tripura and Meghalaya were going to the polls as well. I had limited time. I went to Meghalaya, I went to Tripura, I didn't come to Nagaland. And I regret it. I promise you that when Nagaland holds its next election, I will come, I will have breakfast, I will have lunch, I will have dinner, I will have your pork and bamboo shoot, I will have everything that Nagaland has to offer. I did it in Ukhrul. I remember I'm going to Ukhrul and they had made this lovely pork dish, kind of Naga pork dish for me during the Manipur elections of 2022. I will come anywhere where food takes me. Because part of India's diversity is its cuisine. So I will definitely come, I promise you.
Okay, one more question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good evening. I'm a journalist from Nagaland Post.
Good.
I have two questions. So one is relating to the state and the other is to the country as a whole. So the first question is when the Lok Sabha election was held, Congress candidate went against all the 60 MLAs candidate but lost with a huge margin. So what do you have to say on that, and then what was the situation inside the newsroom? The second question is, how will you...
The first question is the Congress candidate where?
In Nagaland.
Won the election?
Yes.
Yes.
Now the second question is pertaining to the entire country. How would you describe the state of politics across the country in a single word and a single sentence?
Look, the first question I can't answer. You people in Nagaland know much more about your state than I will ever do. So I will not even venture to, I will listen to you and learn from you as to why the Congress won here. About your second question, how do you describe Indian politics or Indian in one sentence? We are the most crazy, diverse country in the world. And therefore, one nation with one leader, one party, one religion will always battle against the diversity dividend. India's strength, whether in politics or society, is its diversity dividend. I am a great cricket romantic. And we are the #1 cricket team in the world for a reason. Because cricket has embraced India's diversity dividend more than any other facet of our society. In other facets, we still live on nepotism. We still live with our cliques, our networks, our groups, our elites. In cricket, a Mahendra Singh Dhoni was a railway ticket collector. 10 years later, he was holding the World Cup. I believe whether India's strength, India's strength is its diversity dividend. Politics in its own ways does represent also part of that diversity. And India is a grand coalition of various diverse interests which are multi-religious, multi-ethnic, multilingual, and that is India for you. You know, we are a thali. We are not a la carte. In India, we are a thali. You will have sabzi, you will have dal, you will have roti, you will have... I mean, I go to some parts of India, they don't have roti at all. You go to other parts, there's only rice. And it's all, so I think Indian politics is actually about diversity. About representing various interests, not just one interest. That's India.
Okay, I have permission for one last question on the floor. So, yeah.
Yes.
Hi Rajdeep.
Hi.
I'd like to start with a compliment first. The screen doesn't do you justice. Yeah. You said if nothing journalism, but you could have made it on a silver screen too. My question,
You know what they do? They keep the chair low in the TV studio, so they make you look short.
I think so. Because you've got a much more imposing figure in person.
I will make you record this and take it to my producer.
Sure. So I'd like to start by making a small statement first. I believe that nothing has hurt the Congress more than their own hubris. That's what I believe.
Agreed.
And at this point, my question is, after the 24 elections, whatever mileage the opposition got, through no great Chanakyaism of their own, have they already lost it? Have they shot themselves in the foot already? Or are they in the process? Thank you.
Look, in my first 2 books, I had a line which people would laugh every time I'd come to a gathering and say, Rahul Gandhi has never missed an opportunity to miss an opportunity. And what is true about, and rather than focus on the individual, I'd say the party itself. Every part, I think the Congress has become like, it's like a patient in ICU, in lingering decline. It's lingering. And instead of doing surgery, you're applying Band-Aid. When a patient is in ICU, you need to do urgent surgery. Your organization is weak, your leadership is not able to motivate, you don't have the connect with the ground, you need surgery. You're putting band-aid here, one leader here, one leader there, it doesn't work like that. So I think that you're right, there is a lingering problem, and I think that is a bigger question, because the Congress is India's biggest opposition party. So if the opposition party is in ICU, that's not good for democracy in general. The health of a democracy needs a very strong, vibrant opposition. And that, to my mind, is something that is concerning for me. But I'm glad that you mentioned that I am more imposing in real life than I will take that, tell my family, my kids, and make sure that they keep the chair in the studio a little higher, so I look a little more imposing in real life, on a TV screen. But you know, it's better to be imposing in real life. TV at the end of the day is a manufactured image.
Thank you.
You know, we are completely out of time. So we have to close. We have to end our conversation from here.
But thank you very much. You know, I really enjoyed talking to you and coming to your part of the world, learning from you all. I hope to learn more, because I believe this should be a two-way dialogue. You're very, very welcome to write to me or WhatsApp me whenever you feel there's something happening in your state that should be reflected in the national media. All I can say is you have a friend in Delhi. And thank you for having me here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rajdeep Sardesai, for this wonderful, wonderful session. Very inspiring, fascinating, and very heartwarming. We wish this could continue all night, but all good things have to come to an end. So we hope you will come back to Nagaland perhaps for your next book, and then we can have a longer discussion. You can enjoy Naga cuisine, have dinner, lunch, all Naga food. For tonight, we're very glad that this conversation has been very insightful and thought-provoking. I, Abokali Jimomi, SS Women of Dimapur, would like to express my sincerest gratitude to Rajdeep Sardesai and inimitable conversationalist Ayieno Kechü for beautifully navigating the conversation. Special thanks to Hospitality and Venue Associates with Zone Niathu and the unwavering support of the SS Women of Dimapur, a mosaic of cultures from the backbone of our nation, contributing to its vibrancy and richness. Prabha Khaitan Foundation aims to foster unity and appreciation of the rich cultural heritage across India's diverse states. Highlighting the relevance of the same, today we are very pleased to felicitate with Sumi Naga traditional stole, handwoven on the traditional loin by Naga women. This piece of garment is a miniature modern form of the Aahisa Kumi, which translates to the ancestor's shawl in Sumi Naga. It is exclusively worn by men for important occasions. In olden times, the cowrie shells represented the power and the glory of the weaver.